Now it's time for our weekly energy update with Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy.
Well, hello, Teresa. And of course, as we're heading towards the big summer long weekend for Canada Day, although it falls midweek, a lot of people are in fact taking to the roads. And just in time, we see that the markets have completely erased the massive increase. Wouldn't be that massive, but a significant increase, $10 a barrel for oil, and about 10 to 12 cents a liter for the price of gasoline, which we were seeing last weekend. No one could have predicted this outcome because, of course, it looked like tensions were escalating up until last weekend when apparently the move by the U.S. to strike several of the nuclear facilities, building nuclear facilities in Iran, and the muted response by that country appears to have created conditions for a ceasefire. And that is one of the main reasons why, exactly to the day, June the 11th, when we saw this price spike, we've seen prices really come right back to where they were on that day, despite increasing by 10, 12 cents a liter. And of course, this is the backdrop of we're looking at in the United States. And a lot of Canadians and media don't spend a lot of time on this. So let me explain that what happens in terms of inventories is really important. Every week, the United States Department of Energy puts out the weekly petroleum inventory report. Look it up, and you'll see that the U.S. is now starting to see some real signs of higher demand and lower supply. I note gasoline, for instance, the gasoline inventories are down 20% compared to this time last year. That's pretty significant. Diesel, almost the same. And oil, well, about 8% less than what it was this time last year. That suggests that the market could start to move to the upside, but that won't happen this week. We'll have to wait and see what happens here in Canada with demand, but particularly the United States, the July 4th weekend, which is next weekend, where we are likely to see demand surge as a result of cheaper prices, as a result of, again, of what we've seen in the past week, with the markets basically saying there's no geopolitical risk or tension that would justify these numbers. So for the summertime period, I have to go back to almost 2016, the last time we've seen prices this low in Canada for this time of year. If you compared this time this year compared to last year, heading into this long weekend, or for many will be a long weekend, average prices across the country about $1.35, $1.37. Right now, if you would look at compared to this time last year, it was more like $1.66, $1.67. So a 30-cent savings. A lot of that to do with, of course, the government is temporarily suspending carbon taxes. It looks like Mr. Carney is going to be only dealing going in the future with European nations that have carbon taxes and carbon jurisdictions. So get ready. It's going to get very expensive, but that's not for today. And in the meantime, we can take solace in the fact that we're probably saving anywhere from $15 to $20 a tank full on fill up. Areas of the country, though, that aren't really responding and budging, it's a little bit of a surprise. New Brunswick, Atlantic Canada, everyone loves the regulated prices in that part of the country, and yet, like a little security blanket, they hang on to it and want bureaucrats to determine what the price should be. But they've been fleeced for the past week. Yes, holding on to regulated prices in Eastern Canada has a cost, and it's a cost that in many parts of this country they're least able to afford. So anybody who thinks price regulation is cool and trendy, it was created, 2010, 2030, goes back to the 1930s, actually. At a time in which there was really no way of predicting where prices were. Predictability, of course, didn't exist, neither did the internet. And these are market numbers that I think should be reflected daily at the pumps in that part of the country. Why? Well, we've seen that 10, 12 cent decrease in most of Canada. Atlantic Canada saw a tiny decrease, 4 or 5 cents a liter. They're still going to have to wait a few more days until the average price of last week really sinks in. So anybody who thinks regulated prices are good for consumers, think again. You have this week as yet another example of the public being fleeced by regulators and people who know nothing about this industry. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the folks out there who actually believe that long weekends see gas prices increase. Well, wrong again. Theories like that just don't hold water. And more often than not, we're now seeing long weekends because of what happens in the United States. That's where market is determined. That's where prices are determined. We see gas prices across much of Canada dropping in advance of the long weekend. And I don't see any change for the next week, maybe a penny up or down here and there. What's critical, though, Teresa, is that we see a lot of gas stations offering cheaper gasoline after 5 and 6 p.m. So if you're a big city across Canada, never, ever, ever buy your gasoline before 6 p.m. I don't, and I save a lot of money. If you follow that theory, You'll probably save $200-300 a year, unless, of course, you're quite wealthy and you like government grifting and you can do all sorts of wonderful things. And money is no object. For most Canadians, that's not the case. So take my advice. It's worth several cups of coffee every year. Now, this week, we're looking at prices remaining in the 157, 158 range for Vancouver. The rest of British Columbia between $1.48 and $1.60. The high end in Prince George, but a little lower in Kamloops, Kelowna. We're looking at Alberta in the 128, 129 range, both Edmonton and Calgary, places in between. Saskatchewan, oh, it never moves. $1.33, $1.34. And of course, Manitoba, $1.30, $1.29, especially in Winnipeg, where it's $1.26, a little bit below cost. Ontario, staying in a range of about $1.32 to $1.34. And Quebec, always 25 cents a liter more expensive. They love higher taxes on gasoline, and they still have a carbon tax. So they're paying about $1.58 to $1.60. That includes Quebec City. And of course, Atlantic Canada, again, with those bad regulated prices, you're paying about $1.50 a liter. Some places a little lower than that, 146, but some places as high as $1.54. I'm looking at some of the numbers. Nova Scotia 143, New Brunswick 147, PEI 147, and of course Newfoundland 152. Higher taxes, and again, regulated prices, which are maintaining a 5%, fleecing, if you will. So get rid of it. Now, diesel will be going up, so get ready for about a 4 to 5 cent increase this week for diesel as markets reflect what's happening with that tighter supply and demand going through the roof. That's it for this week, this weekend, Teresa. Have a great Canada Day festivity, and to all our viewers here as well.